Big time, no none. Diamonds in my teeth, I got a lot of shine.
Somebody changed the intro on me.
That's completely different.
What are you going to do? You know, you got a monkey juggling knives back here. But we are live. We are ready to go for a brand new week here on the DFS Army MLB Pre-Lock podcast / vidcast / show / chop / razzle. All that good stuff. So, did you have a good weekend? I can tell you this. I did not, for MLB purposes, have a great weekend. I'm hoping that you can save our bacon and say that you did.
I feel like I didn't have the greatest weekend. Not really sure. I think one of the days I definitely broke even, but might have been Saturday because more action on Saturday than Sunday. So Sunday wasn't the best.
Well, that doesn't sound good. It sounds like everybody crapped out on, your and my end anyway. I'm hoping that some members did. Well, I know we've got some screenshots. If I can figure out how to share these things in there, I know they're not difficult. Got about 2 or 3 things going on at once that if I could show some, I will. And I might pop them in throughout the show a little bit, cover up our sexy faces. But in the meantime, we've got the leverage stacks page up, just kind of showing where, the chalk might be who's got what and what's got who's. Kansas City's chalky sounding right to you?
I mean, it's sounding right based on everybody's going to chase yesterday and the fact that they hit
7 bombs,
7 home runs, and that's after they had 18, I think, in the first month and a week of the season. So it just feels like people are going to chase, and that's one of the reasons why I'm debating Shane Smith in my pitcher pool is that alone. The only problem is Kansas City doesn't strike out enough.
Right. They have always been a pretty low strikeout team, to be quite honest with you. That must just be a hitting approach thing. But then, I mean, you got other teams. I'm looking at Arizona, Seattle, et cetera. New York, the Mets have slipped a little bit. In terms of Chicago and the Yankees are way down the list. I don't know if that's weather related for the Yankees. Maybe I need to check the weather station too. But when those big offenses go down the list, I know it's because they're expensive in a lot of cases, but it also looks to me like that could be opportunity for people that are willing to chase the big offenses and with their big stacks, or maybe with their mini stack side or whatever. Is there anything that you see jumping out at you right off the hop in the slate?
I mean,
log back in.
For me, it's the fact that the New York Mets are the 6th highest owned team. They're my number 1 stack, so
yeah,
I would gladly flip flop them in Kansas City. The Cubs, low game total, wind blowing in Chicago. Yankees, rain, and they're facing Nick Pivetta. I wouldn't really expect them to be popular-ish. But yeah, I mean, it's odd seeing like St. Louis ahead of the Mets. I don't know it's 1%, but still seeing St. Louis ahead of them, ahead of Atlanta even. But yeah, I mean, other than that, everything looks kind of normal. I think Cincinnati's my number 2 team. They're number 2 on the ownership, which sucks because I don't like to go chalky in my top tier, but apparently that's where I'm at.
They're your number 2 overall team on the slate?
They are my number 2 overall. Yeah. It's the Mets, and then the Reds are in my top tier. The Mets number 1 for sure, but I basically do 3 tiers for my main stacks, and those are the top 2.
Would you mind really quickly shooting down tier 2 and maybe tier 3, and then we can go game by game and pick out pitching and such?
Yeah, right now tier 2 is a 4-team group. It's Arizona, Atlanta, Chicago, the Cubs, and then it does have St. Louis in it, which still feels weird. Tier 3, it's a 6-team tier. Kansas City, the Athletics, Seattle, Pittsburgh, and then it's Milwaukee and Houston for now. But Milwaukee and Houston might be replaced by San Francisco, San Diego, depending on what we hear weather-wise.
Right. I will try to type those into the chat for people to reference. So as we go game by game, while you're talking about pitching and who you like and who you don't. I'll try and work those in there. If it was me, I just looked earlier today too. Just off the top of my head, first glance without digging in any numbers, New York popped for me, and Chicago and New York are going to. New York being the Yankees being so far down, the list blew my mind. The Mets they slipped a little bit. Arizona and Seattle are up top, which I'm not really high on Arizona necessarily. I got San Diego listed. I've got the Athletics listed. So we're overlapping a good bit, which is interesting. If we get towards the end, I do like the whole domination station setup idea. I might do something different with like a single lineup today and have you kind of guide me and round me out. That might be something fun for people to see, a little different brand of manipulation. But let's start off with San Diego and the Yankees. That is a weather spot. I just showed that on the screen as a potential in-game delay in PPD for people according to our weather station. So that's got you off arms, I'm sure. There's not going to be any Pivetta in your.
I mean, right now they're in. I just need to know more on timing. The clearest window would be early on, so starting normal time. We just got an update. If they delay the start, then it becomes really bad or bad news. So if they plan on starting on time, then I'm going to have Pivetta and Rodon in, just because there's such a gigantic ownership gap between Cole Reagans and those two that I want to play some leverage. Both Pivetta and Rodon could easily become the highest raw point scorer at the pitcher position tonight. And I love the potential for rain-shortened games on DraftKings, because then we randomly get a 6-inning complete game bonus out of a pitcher if things go correctly. And in the past, we have used that to our advantage to take down some large field GPPs when Hunter Green absolutely dominated for 5 or 6 innings, and it was a rain-filled game. And people jumped off of him because of it. But I mean, bats-wise, I don't really feel all that strongly about full stacks because of the pitchers. There are a couple bats that are in good spots. I mean, Judge is always in a good spot. Right. On the other side, obviously Tatis, Machado's really good spot against Rodon, and then one of the catchers. The Padres do have 2 catchers in their lineup tonight, and I think Diaz has been hitting home runs, and Campusano's might be hitting 5th. So there are a couple of spots that are interesting.
That lineup's confirmed. He is confirmed in the 5th spot. Yeah. So Campusano. That's a hell of a price for a 5th place hitter in offense that can do some damage.
So like, there's upside to that.
He might even be a cash game going off on like DraftKings.
Yeah, if you're going to be told that the game's going to play through, or you have a chance for 7 innings out of it, then I think he becomes a cash play because he's so cheap.
God, I might even do it anyway. I mean, as long as the weather isn't just a complete train wreck. I mean, I've gambled with worse than $2,000 players. So
right.
I know you don't want to in cash. You don't want to incur any risk. But, I mean, if I've got a $2,000 catcher that has 20 to 40% risk on him, that to me is almost as good as a guy that's $3,000 with no risk on him. It's baseball. They're all over the damn place as it is. So, and in cash game, low risk. I mean, come on, let's call a spade a spade. This game is a volatile disaster as it is. So there's no such thing as a safe baseball player anyway. Yeah, jump on that next one with Cincinnati and Atlanta. I posted your stacks down there, and I'm going to scroll through some questions here too. So after a couple of games, we'll stop and take some questions.
I think I am interested in both pitchers, but they are a volatile spot. Singer's been stronger this year at times, and then he's had a couple bad starts. Smith-Shawver's actually gotten better with each start. The previous years, he's a young guy. He just looked overmatched at the major league level. But he's starting to look better, and Cincinnati can go dormant offensively. Pretty hit or miss offense. Obviously, I know I have Cincinnati in my top tier because I'm, playing for their upside. Because when they go off, they really go off. Power steals that sort of thing, and that's the type of thing we want. Obviously, I'm partial to Cincinnati because they won me $50K, over the last couple seasons in a game. So I like that upside. The Braves offense struggling, but there's so much power. And we just saw like Austin Riley crush against Dustin May, which wasn't really expected. So there's upside, but like to me, I should really consider Atlanta a lower tier team. I have them in the second tier because of the power, but really I think it's only a handful of guys in their lineup. The top half, that bottom half looks pretty rough. But like Sean Murphy is a pretty great one-off. I think he's got BVP in his favor, if I remember correctly. I'd have to look at my notes. Yeah, he's 5 for 8 with 2 home runs and 2 doubles off Brady Singer. So I think Atlanta feels more small stacks and one-off than Cincinnati. Cincinnati feels more full stacks or fade almost because of their volatility.
Just boom or bust, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. They're neither one are a team that I'm necessarily on. I was surprised to hear you say Cincinnati. I mean, I get it. I understand why. I had other ones that popped out to me, for whatever it's worth. Not that, certainly not disagreeing. Looks like we got a couple regulars in here. Dixon's in here. Chuck's in here. I saw Ken in here. We got a few guys. Hey, not a bad returning audience. I mean, up to 50 people. We topped out at 70, so we need to go gather our friends and get us up a little bit higher. But Dixon is saying basically he wants you to call Shohei and Soto to go yard tonight. That feels pretty expensive and pretty chalky. But if that's who you got going, man, yeah, let's hit them over the wall.
I mean, for me, the obvious feel is Pete Alonso, which is still pretty chalky, but BVP special Pete Alonso 4 for 9 with 3 home runs off Ryan Nelson.
How do you feel about Soto right now? I want to see if we can give Dixon that aneurysm. I don't know if you saw the comment.
What did he say?
He said if you don't like him, he's going to have an aneurysm.
I mean, I love the Mets. I will tell you, as of right now, in my $111 lineup, I came off of Soto in a 5-man Met stack. Partially because I just needed the money. Things got really tight in my mini stack spot. So I felt like I had to come off of somebody. So unfortunately, he's number 5 in my Mets priority for stacking tonight. I think he's starting to turn around. He's one of those guys that a couple years ago, when he was in the home run derby, he was struggling the first half. I don't know if some people that's been with us for long enough remember that I called that he was going to explode in the second half because the home run derby spent the whole time going to left center rather than pull the ball. And that's what he needed to do to ignite himself. While his 2 home run game the other day were both to left center, basically the same exact spot. So seeing a guy like that start doing that, I think he's about to go on a run.
Absolutely. And you're not going to keep a guy of his caliber down long anyway. He's going to get there by the end of the year. And the longer he stays down now, the more he's going to become a decent play for a while he's heating up and everybody catches on. Speaking of point chasing, though, you mentioned Kansas City and the Bombs, why you think they're chalky. Let's dive into that next game because Chuck's basically asking and I think we already know the answer to the question, if you think KC will match those homers. And he says you can't pay him to play the White Sox after that week. I can't agree anymore. I'm not a White Sox guy. If they go off, they go off. Even if Razzle says he's a mini stack White Sox guy, I'm inclined to just keep looking in other directions and just root on Razzle from the sidelines.
I mean, I don't know why you'd be off of them after this weekend. I would think this weekend would have put you more on them. They put up runs Friday in a spot that I predicted. 7 runs on Friday. They put up 5 runs yesterday in beating Houston as well. It is more of a mini stack in that regard for the White Sox, but Kansas City, they aren't they're just not full power. They don't strike out a whole lot, but they went into yesterday's game with 18 home runs on the year. So hitting 7 of them, I mean, obviously is an aberration anyways, but like
franchise records never happened before in KC.
Why people are trying to follow that up. Shane Smith's been a respectable pitcher, or better, to start his major league career. So it's not really a spot where I want to hurry up and just start jamming in Royals. The wind's blowing in from right field. Not that that's a huge deal, but Kauffman Stadium plays pretty big overall. So with some wind blowing in there and in the 60s, I prefer the pitching in that matchup.
Sure.
I don't necessarily I want to love Reagan's, but his ownership percentage is so high, coming off of a skip start because of a groin issue. Like, I have some worries there because his 2 starts leading up to that were the greatest. Maybe he's healthy now, or I don't. Maybe he leaves in the 4th inning again tonight. We don't really know.
Right.
So
I totally get that for tournaments.
Why I want to put that in Rodon.
Yeah. He's expensive too, and it's a hard GPP pitcher to fall on. But I think for cash, I think he's one of the couple on the slate you probably got to roll with just based on that ownership alone. If he does do well, you're fine. If he doesn't do well, whatever. Unless is this a spot? That's what I would say. And I know you don't play a lot of cash, but what would you say? Because I know that you dive into those pitchers more than I do. I'm just liable to lean on ownership and go. Do you see anybody else that is safer floor / upside that you would pivot off of that Reagan's ownership and use 2 other pitchers instead on DraftKings, or would you just eat him as well?
No, I think you have to eat them, unfortunately.
Well, I was really hoping you'd say no, and you had a couple for us, because if it's smart, you can get some leverage with it. But generally speaking, when what is he, 40% or something crazy? When he's up that high, it's just kind of
50%.
Yeah,
I mean 50% right now, or I just
generally eat it and go.
I mean, the thinking would work if there wasn't weather issues in New York. You can get away and you can sell me on Pivetta or Rodon because of their K ability, to where they're going to have decent floors because of those strikeout upside numbers. They likely give up a couple runs, but the days of us chasing guys throwing shutouts should have left years ago with the way that baseball is now. But the problem is like after those at the top, it kind of falls off quite a bit from a reliability standpoint. I think the better one, the best option lower might be Matthew Boyd, and I don't really love trusting Matthew Boyd, but we might have to. But I mean, it's tough. I wanted to love the pitching in the Seattle Athletics game, but I prefer that game to be in Seattle and not in Sacramento.
Of course. I will tell you, I do believe that the DS does like Bryce Miller paired with Reagan's because it's trying to also buy some bats. But that might have been the stacks that I was choosing, the more expensive stacks where it really had to kind of go down at pitcher instead of like a Reagan's Boyd or something like that that might be a little bit more expensive.
Yeah, I mean, Reagan's Boyd with the Mets really makes it tough. Like you're mini stacking like
right
Santiago Espinal and Tyler Callahan from the Reds,
right.
With like Freddie Fermin as a one-off at catcher, cheap guy. Or your mini stacking.
Campusano's your one-off, man. Campusano's your one-off. I
mean,
think
Freddie Fermin at 2,300 is fine because he's been swinging it well. So like he's an option. I mean, you can mini stack Kansas City. I would prefer to do that rather than fully stack them based on yesterday's performance. And there are cheap ways to do that. India with Fermin, India with Drew Waters, Kyle Isbell, 2 out of those 3.
Down there in the bottom of that Kansas City. You want them to go off again so they flip that lineup over a few times. I'm still looking at – I mean, I know you're saying he's an option. For me, I'm still – I can't come off of Campusano and San Diego because he's batting 5th as well. It's like that lineup doesn't need to flip over as much as it does, the Kansas City one does to get, Fermin back in there. But I totally get it. It's not It's not anything I'm going to die on a hill of or anything. Where are you? Houston, Milwaukee. We'll keep the train rolling here, and then we got more questions we'll jump to.
This is kind of one of the games where I'm just kind of off of it because, I mean, I'm going to use Blanco. He's projecting well-ish because the Milwaukee bats have been pretty cold over the last 14 days or so. I still do have some worry about them at home because they can just randomly explode. So I don't want to go super heavy on Blanco, but the way that I play it, I have to go overweight if I'm using him really. Houston side without Yordan Alvarez going on the IL, that lineup is weaker. They do have a couple guys that are swinging it better in Pena, Yainer Diaz, Jake Myers is suddenly on fire. Tobias Myers is a question mark right now. He hasn't looked good in his first 2 starts back from injury. He threw out of the bullpen 3 days ago, just 1 inning. I just don't think you can trust him. The problem is I don't really want to trust the offenses in this game either.
No. I mean, Milwaukee can score some runs, but I'm not. I would just skip over both of them tonight. Even in MME, I would have them at such minimal percentages. If it was me, Ken reminds us that weather. Joey Tornado just posted an update that New York's not looking very good. The rain is very off and on through the night. I'd have to go read the update myself to get an idea word for word in terms of how he leans. He is very aggressive in terms of keeping us on a game. So if he says that it's not looking good, then that might start leaning me off of games like that. Just thought I would pass that out for everybody. Don DePlane is saying with the large field stacking, like a large field GPP, stacking the Mets and Arizona game, he's asking if that would be a decent strategy. I think being in Arizona, I think it would be. But you might be able to tell me if that pitching is going to, cap the upside a little bit in there, or if it's okay for you to game stack as well.
I mean, the game's definitely worthy of a game stack. It's just super expensive. I would.
Rates.
I mean, for one, I would definitely make sure Jeff McNeil is in my stack. He's one of my favorite bats. Cheaper, gets you some salary to work with. It might allow you then to get a better pitcher out of the two. But I mean, obviously the Mets are at the top. Arizona's a tier 2 for me. Definitely a spot that I want to get bats in for sure. It's just a matter of making things fit. You do kind of have to be creative.
Yeah,
you have to consider Tyrone Taylor, who's been swinging it pretty well for the Mets, but you have to consider somebody like that to make it work.
When you're down there in the bottom of those orders again for value,
yep.
In a lot of cases, which obviously requires things to really, really go well. Wendy, I don't know if Wendy's still in the room or not. I mean, shoot, we're up to 77 people. Hey, it's new personal best, people. PB. Asking who you like for 3 max. And I mean, the only thing I would say there is as we go through these games, you're going to hear names tossed out. You're going to hear stacks tossed out. 3 max is not that much different than single entry or MME in that you're going to take more stands than multi-entry stuff, or even 20 max. It's going to play more like a single entry. You can pick 2 or 3 options and kind of build 2 or 3 different lineups, but generally your core plays, you're still going to like your Aaron Judges. You're still going to like the bigs on the slate, like your Pete Alonso's that we've already mentioned, the same pitching for the most part. Some people will kind of do the whole, I don't want somebody in all 3 lineups. I'd rather have them in maybe 2 out of 3 of my lineups so that I'm not completely exposed to somebody. Others will just go balls to the wall. It's more of a strategic thing. It's not really I like these players for single entry, and I like these players for 3 max. I like these players, for 20 max. If it were, it would be an expanding zone of a player pool. You know what I mean? Like you'd start off, with your single entry, you've got 1 lineup, you'd be all in on everybody, and there's just no other lineup you're putting together, so that's just who you got. On a 3 max, you can expand that player pool a little bit where you might say, well, gosh, this guy was kind of on the fringe of my single entry stuff, and I kind of wanted to include him. I didn't quite get there. It didn't quite fit. Then you can go build a lineup again when the 3 max comes around and kind of add that guy in there if you want to. So your player pool will expand a little bit, but generally speaking, the players that we're on are going to be the players that we're on. So it's a very hard question to ask. I appreciate the question for sure. Then Dixon back asking if Alonso and Soto. He has a comment about he might be homeless if they don't. That's funny. He's also asking about the lineup. I guess he dropped it in Discord. He wants you to review that if you can. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that per se. We might give it a shot a time or two, but you always get those questions of, what are your thoughts on this? Well, my thoughts are it's baseball, man. As long as you've got solid pitching and you've got a stacked lineup on both sides in a GPP or maybe a little lesser stack, and you're kind of going with the more popular players in a cash game, I'm going to tell you the lineup is fine. I'm not going to pick it apart because I'm not going to be the guy that watches, Suarez go for 4 bombs and be the guy that talked you off of him, because anything in a MLB, anything's possible. That's another hard question to ask. Let's see. We scroll down a little bit here just to get caught up. Wanted to go way under on Reagan's. Ken said he wanted to go way under on Reagan's. Doesn't have the New York game.
I don't.
If you're going underweight on Reagan's, would you spread ownership around the rest of the current pool? That's the way I'm reading that.
I don't
think I'm going underweight on Reagan's is the thing.
Like, to go underweight on Reagan's, I need that New York game to play to start on time, because if that's not part of my pool, like, the pitching options for the upside just aren't there, and I'm not going to be left out holding my stack when Reagan's puts up 30 DK points.
If the New York game postpones, what would you do? Would that push you even more onto Reagan's because of limited?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to then go on the other side and go heavily overweight on Reagan's. Mm-hmm. It's going to be super volatile because, like, yes, he could re-injure the groin or whatever, but there's just no other pitchers that basically can match the upside that he's going to provide tonight. And that's what I'm playing for. I can live with duds as long as I'm going after the right pitchers. And, like, he legitimately could. There's a route to him putting up SP1 numbers where the next best pitcher on the slate, if we lose that game, combined with the number 3 pitcher, might equal his score. Like, he could go for 32 to 35. If he's right, and SP2 and SP3 on the slate could go 16 to 18 each. Like, there could be that big of a gap, and I'm just not willing to swallow that, because I think at some point you try to get too cute with ownership, and it gets you off of just the right play.
Correct. 100% correct. And that was one thing that I wanted to mention, besides the banner scrolling across the bottom, of course, for the 78 folks that are watching us. MLB Live, get you 10% off if you guys want to get in here today, because when we cut this stream off here in about 10 or 15 minutes, that's going to open up that Discord right up until lock for, maybe Razzle or myself or somebody to dive in there and really dive into the VIP side of things and get people a little bit, less fluff answers that we're going to do out here for obvious reasons. That's where the DFS Army really has its advantage, is in that Discord. But, for other content options, the YouTube, we're putting out shorts now. Razzle has his pitching video every day. There's plenty of options out there for free. So we really tried to dive in and spend a little bit more time with our VIPs on that side of things too. So let's move to San Francisco and the Chicago Cubs. I could be on the Cubs in a big way if they weren't so expensive from up, top to bottom. But if I had to pick 2 out of that lineup, I think it's Kyle Tucker and PCA, which is not a connected mini stack, but man, that's where the power feels like it is. Is there anything that you see really standing out in that game that you want to talk about, or are you kind of in the same? I would stack the Cubs if they weren't so expensive, all full 5. I'd mini stack them for sure. I'm not on Giants at all. And I'm, outside of Boyd, if he can't pair with Reagan's, then I probably won't be using much of him anyway.
I want to be off of most of the hitters in the game. It is the coolest spot on the night. Wind is blowing in, not gigantic, but wind does affect that ballpark more than any park in baseball. People are going to all be on Tucker PCA because he's hitting a bunch of home runs.
Mhm.
I'm kind of wanting to get back to Seiya Suzuki and then Dansby Swanson. A little bit of reverse power splits on the lane and route side that I kind of want to take advantage of.
Look at Dansby down there in the 8 hole.
Dansby's been swinging it pretty well too. So I'm just, I don't know. I trust the splits research that I see. So that's kind of where I'm gonna go. I mean, I'll play everybody too, but
Sure.
but
Just looking at him down there in the 8 at 4,200, thinking that if he's going to get a 4th or 5th at bat tonight, that rest of that lineup's doing some work too. So he's a good piece for sure. But
yeah,
that just feels a little.
I'm not big on worrying about batting order spots for GPPs. So like, I'll gladly go there and
We'll definitely get some lower ownership on him.
He'll get the 4 at bat, so I'm not too worried about that. Because if he doesn't, then the top of the lineup didn't do anything anyways, and the stack's dead. So, one way to look at it for me.
For sure.
He just comes in better trends than most of that offense. So that's why I want to make sure he's part of most of my stacks.
Gotcha. Fair enough. I mean, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, anything to talk about there? I mean, maybe a couple of bats here and there, but I'm not touching Michaelis, and I don't even know what to do with the Pittsburgh side of things. I usually just don't even look at Pittsburgh on a slate. I just kind of scroll right past them.
I'm using bats, not using pitching. Both teams are in my main stack pool. I will always pick on Miles Mikolas, even if he
Amen to that.
Comes out and strikes out 8 in the first 5 innings or something. But really for Pittsburgh, it's the top part of that lineup.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably a better mini stack team than a full stack, but I just like them a little bit more than like San Francisco and the White Sox. So,
absolutely.
I need generally 12 teams in my main stack pool to make my numbers work the way that
your pool's bigger than mine.
Yeah, so I do have to come up with 12 teams to make it work, and so Pittsburgh definitely ahead of those guys. St. Louis, I kind of like some speed upside. Brendan Donovan, Victor Scott, Newbar's kind of popping projection-wise.
He is. So he is in the yes. Optimizer was pulling him in as a one-off quite a bit.
Yeah,
and Burleson too, honestly, but that's because Burleson's 2,800 and batting second.
He's somebody that needs to start getting hot.
For sure.
Not matching last year's production yet.
And in terms of St. Louis itself, Nolan Gorman is somebody that is headed back to the minors if he's not careful, because he is batting about $1.75 or something, which that puts significant holes. If you've got Burleson in the 2 and Gorman in the 6 or 7, and Contreras isn't that. I mean, he's getting a little hotter, but he's not that great. Arenado's cooled off a little bit. It's like there's just holes all up in there, so it's hard to put a contiguous stack together that you think could really do enough damage to win a GPP. So I might almost throw them. I know they're a tier 2 stack for you tonight, but I might almost keep them in the mini stack side myself as well, just because I just don't. But that's homerism. This is where I'm from. That's what I see, and I'm stuck with the selective bias in my brain as a general rule. Is there anything you would say to counter any of that, or do you just want to talk about the Mets and Arizona Diamondbacks? Because that seems to be like what everybody wants to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I like St. Louis as a full stack just because you have guys that can steal bases, extra base hits, that sort of thing. It might not be full power home run wise, but a lot of that movement can add up for a bunch of guys in the lineup. They're a team that most likely isn't going to have just 2 guys do it and score 7 runs, to where if they score 7-8 runs, it's probably five guys drive in runs, 5 guys have multiple hits, that sort of thing. So, but the Arizona and the Mets game, my favorite game to target. I see there's a comment in chat about real interested in Ryan Nelson. I'm not interested in Ryan Nelson. I'm pretty sure he's been pitching out of the bullpen, so he's not super extended. And the Mets have actually destroyed him in the past. Just a ton of BVP pointing towards the Mets in this matchup. I get that they had to play 2 games yesterday. They lost them both. So that's a frustrating part. But obviously that means they didn't play on Saturday, right? Like rained out and had to play a doubleheader on Sunday. So I don't think it's as big of a deal. Like the Dodgers and Braves played later than the Mets played yesterday. And the Dodgers start earlier tonight. And the Mets had to travel west, which is easier to take than traveling east across the country. They actually technically gain a couple hours. Whereas if they were on the West Coast and traveling home to have this game, it'd be a little different story for me. So with that, I don't think it really affects me that much at this point. So for that reason, like I'm big on the Mets because of their history, and being the visitor also helps quite a bit for that 9th inning at bat for an offense that I think highly of. A lot of the Arizona pieces that I like normally are cooling off some. Perdomo's hot. Gurriel's finally trying to wake up, but Naylor and Pavin Smith have both cooled off from their hot stretch for a little bit. I obviously like Arizona because I like them all the time against right-handed pitching. But Canning's actually been pretty good. Not even just respectable, but pretty strong. I don't expect that to continue all season. So it's a matter of guessing right when the regression hits. And just because of Arizona's huge upside offensively, that's why they're a tier 2 team. If it was based on recent performance, I think they'd be a tier 3 for me.
Definitely game stackable is the takeaway there. If you wanted to just load up on bats, great environment, great lineups, top to bottom in a lot of cases. So I think that's where a lot of the potential lies. Let's do Seattle and Oakland really quick, and then I want to play with the DS for 5 minutes or so, and then we'll jump into the Discord with the people. I said Bryce Miller before, and that was actually wrong. The guy that is pairing with Reagan's is actually Tobias Myers out of the DS. I was just taking a look at it, so I had that one wrong. But are you on Bryce Miller at all? Does it make sense to you?
I am.
No pitching here at all.
I mean, I'm on them or on him because I think the A's themselves have cooled off enough. And as much as we wanted to like offense in this ballpark, the A's have hit more home runs on the road than at home. So I'm kind of interested in that. Over the last week, the A's have a team ISO of 130, which isn't all that great considering it's being buoyed by the fact that Rooker's at 222 and Bleday's at 348. Soderstrom an 040, Jacob Wilson a 0 in the ISO category. It's just there's some upside to Bryce Miller, but there's a lot of downside too. Lawrence Butler striking out a lot, Nick Kurtz is striking out a lot, so there are strikeouts to be had. Brent Rooker as well. So it's just a volatile spot, so that's why I want to be on him because of it. Because there are people that just blindly play the Athletics based on their home run hitting so far this season. It's kind of continued from last year. They were definitely a powerful team last year. They just struck out a lot more last year than they have been this year. They're only striking out about 7 times per game at home, which is a low number. But Bryce Miller's K prop is 4.5, so it's not all that great, to be honest. We're used to seeing some pitchers against Seattle over the last couple of years, or against Oakland, the Athletics. The last couple of years where they're 5.5, 6.5, and 7 for K props. Severino actually has better props in this game than Bryce Miller does, which is really scary because Seattle's number 1 in baseball from a road OPS standpoint. Super powerful lineup, but Severino's been around the block for a while. Still throwing mid-90s. Like, he still has the stuff. And I still think Seattle is a strikeout-prone team because power does slump. And when that happens, like when Cal Raleigh slows down and Polanco slows down, there's a lot of strikeouts to be had.
That ought to pretty much wrap the game-by-game stuff up. Real quickly here, I want you to roll through here. What I'm going to actually try and tell people this week, focus a little bit more kind of hybridized building that can blend some cash game stuff in with GPPs. People ask about small field tournaments. It's not a bad way to go. They ask about triple ups and boosters and some of the cash game infusing a little bit of double up with it as a hedge. That stuff all definitely matters. And when we do that, we'll lean a little bit on ownership, but we want to correlate for sure. You want to get to that top 5 to 10%, top maybe even 2% for boosters in terms of lineup ranking, so that you've got that upside to get there. You don't just need to make the top half and then move on. So building lineups, I'll tend to stack them. I'll let the domination station kind of eat some of that chalk pitching like it's tending to do right now. But I want to show you the teams that I threw in here and open up this tab. Hopefully everybody can see that. I just set it up to put 5x2 stacks on things so it's correlated. You could do you can tone it down a little bit if you're putting a cash element in there, although I don't. It's baseball. I want those 5-man stacks when they work. I used the 3 top teams in your list. I guess I used the Chicago Cubs. I did not use Cincinnati on the big side. I could include them. We'll see what happens. And kind of mirror that on the other side, but then put in some of the other teams that you had. So we'll kind of do this a little bit differently. Seattle Athletics, I don't know if we'll do Casey's and mini stacks. All right, I guess on the bottom of the order, but let's just see what happens. I want to see what these put out, and you tell me where you like, because the very first one, it's putting Reagans and Myers in there, and then it's got Alvarez as a one-off at catcher, which is interesting out of the Mets, but it's a full Cubs stack with a mini Seattle stack. Is that with Polanco and Tellez? Is that a stack that you would be comfortable with in some sort, let's call it like a 3 max, since that question was asked, or would you be focused on somebody other than the Cubs and look for different options?
I mean, I think I'd probably focus on different options. The Cubs are going to get ownership because of what they've done coming into today. I don't necessarily think that they're going to explode tonight. I mean, they do have the upside. I really don't like the Tellez part of it, just because he's going to pop everywhere because he's so cheap.
Right.
So like that's a piece that I'll probably end up underweight on, just because it's not that I don't think he's solid. It's just I don't want him to pop that much.
How about this next one here? We've got a 5-man Arizona stack with 2 Seattle, and the 2 Seattle Mariners are Cal Raleigh and Jorge Polanco. That's got to be better.
That's definitely a lot better. Those are the best power hitters from Seattle right now, the hottest hitters for the most part. And obviously Arizona is a spot we like.
Bottom of the order, Arizona, though, to make it fit salary-wise, you got your 7, 8, 9.
It's going to happen. You're just rarely going to be able to play 1 through 5.
For sure.
But we just got some news that the Yankee game's starting delayed, which to me now, I think that puts me off of that entire game.
Really?
Because it sounded like the weather's only just going to keep building as the night goes on.
If that's the case, that's obviously a bad sign.
So it definitely takes me off of the pitching. And I have to decide what I want to do from a hitting standpoint.
I would have to look at the radar myself. When I hear that news, though, a lot of times, and this is more of a summertime probably thought, Again, you guys have to use the weather station or listen to Razzle before you listen to me. But the reason that my initial reaction was, ooh, that's a little bit better, is because if they're waiting for a wave to come through and then they think they can get that game in, that actually helps the starting pitcher most times because it doesn't interrupt his routine in the second inning. Or so, they take the field, 4 or 5 outs, Tarp comes on the field, that pitcher's not coming back. If they delay the start, that pitcher might get his full allotment of pitches in. But if it's going to go downhill the rest of the night, that theory obviously doesn't work. So you need to do a little bit more digging. But that's why my mind immediately went, ooh, that's actually a little bit of positive news. So I was thinking about starting pitching, can maybe make it through the night, but not if the weather's going to keep going downhill. So
it's tough because that throws pitchers off of their routine as well, though.
It does. I agree.
So we've seen some guys that were bigger name and strong plays see a delayed start, and then they just kind of fall on their face because they're just not
pitchers
ready.
Are very routine driven as well.
Yeah. So it's just tough. It's just, for me, it raises the PPD risk in my mind a little too much at this point because those are two big pitchers. A lot of salary put in that in my runs, like I would definitely get both those pitchers together in a lineup too, and I definitely don't want that now.
Right. Here's another lineup for you. I think you're going to like this one even better than the last one. You've got 5 Mets. Perdomo is a one-off, and your 2-3, which is Polanco Raleigh again in Seattle. It really likes Seattle as a mini stack, but your Mets 5 stack is 2, 3, 4, 8, 9. So it's a 5-man 1-gap stack. It's 8, 9, 2, 3, 4. It's only missing the leadoff and Lindor. That's actually a well-connected stack. 2-3 mini stack in Seattle. Your one-off in Perdomo to make golly, Perdomo's a 9 and he's a $4,300 player. That's a great lineup.
Yeah, definitely looks like
well correlated
lineup I would hand build too, and that's a big thing for me. I don't scroll through my runs to hand pick any lineups. Like I just take them. But seeing a lineup like that's one that I would have hand built on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So I always feel good about it at that point.
There's back to the Cubs, which we talked about, and back to the Cubs. So it built 3 out of 5 Cubs stacks. Every mini stack was Seattle, so you'd have to tweak that a little bit if you wanted to get some spread. But it did pick up on Arizona and the Mets for 1 full stack each. And honestly, I like that Mets lineup better myself. But yeah, just a little bit of tool manipulation rolling through that starting lineups page. I think we've got marching orders for the most part. Let's take a quick check in here just to make sure that we're not forgetting absolutely to hit the like and subscribe button, the notification bell. I'm big on the coupon code stuff because I don't think friends should let friends pay retail. So get a discount when you can get a discount, and get in here and start asking Razzle more questions. Before we take this on the air. If anything changes, we'll let you guys know in the next week or so. We're going to do a little bit of reeval, and we'll be back tomorrow, I guess. Can pretty much put a wrap on this thing and let her go so we don't run too far over. When we start late, we're going to go late. That part's for sure. But we're scheduled 4:30 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. And when we get, Razzle had a phone call this time. I had technical difficulties a time before or so. You're going to get a little bit of that. And then eventually when one of us cannot make this show, you're going to see some rando guests pop in here that you guys might like talking to as well. So 93 people, personal best. Keep smashing that record. Let's share it with our friends. Let's get people in here and let's put ourselves on top of leaderboards. Once again, Razzle, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it, buddy. And we'll be in Discord talking to the VIPs up until the next bit here with Locke. And you guys all have a great day and go win some money.
Sounds good to me.